Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to Behind the Steel Curtain and the family of podcasts as we are here with Q&A, the artist the artist formerly known as The Hangover, and it will be known again once we get into the regular season. But for now, Tony and I, we answer your questions. And without any further ado, my good friend Tony Defeo from Behind the Steel Curtain. Tone Def, what's going on?
Hey, Bryan, happy Father's Day to you, and happy Father's Day to all the dads out there, all the Steeler dads. Hope you're all doing well.
Thank you. Very special day for me yesterday. My wife and kids, they just showered me with gifts and love and food, and it was absolutely awesome. Andrew Wilbar says, hello all. Hope all fathers had a great weekend. Thank you, Andrew. We really appreciate that, and we appreciate all of you in the live chat. Ryan O'Toole says, great show yesterday, Bad. It was a very special show for me. I got to talk about my dad and talk about memories, as we all have great Steeler memories. And if you listen to Tony's show on Saturday, he talked about 40 years of being a Steeler fan and all the great memories. And we're spoiled with great memories. Sure, there were some bad ones in there before, but I mean, if it's 80% to 20% for me, I think that there's a lot of great memories there. So, feeling good. Had a great day yesterday. Got a chance to spend time with my dad as well, too. So I feel very blessed. But with that being said, we're going to talk about something that's also very near and dear to Steeler fans, and that's linebackers.
Yeah.
So right now, we have some great linebackers. You have guys right now that are sorry, I just had a interruption. That's okay. You have guys on this team that between TJ Watt, Bud Dupree, also Devon Bush Jr., and the other starter, Vince Williams, who I think is underrated and very important to this team. People, I say this all the time. Week 3, San Francisco, with that 3-headed rushing monster, ran up and down on this team. And you know what happened? Vince Williams wasn't in there. They come back and they play in week 5 the rushing juggernaut Baltimore Ravens, and they didn't completely shut them down, but they held them to a lot less than they're usually accustomed to getting. So this linebacking unit is very important, and they need Vince Williams on that team. They need TJ Watt. They need Devin Bush. And this year they need Bud Dupree. We don't know if he's going to be a one-year rental at this point, or we'll sort that out later. But right now, this is a pretty special unit, Tony. What are your thoughts on this current linebacking quartet, let's call them?
Well, I think this year, just simply with Devin Bush coming into his second year and showing great potential last year as a rookie, a top 10 draft pick, I think if TJ Watt keeps getting better, which why wouldn't he? He seems to be headed towards, as I keep saying, Aaron Donald and his big brother territory. And of course, if Bud has the same kind of year he had last year, I think this could be a plus unit this year. I really do. I'm not just saying that. I really do think it could be something we haven't seen since the heyday of James Harrison and Lamar and James Ferrier, those guys.
That was a very special group. But where do they rank too? So we're going to talk about all of that. And before we get started on that, Dill Whitted throws in, or a one-year wonder, hopefully not. Yeah, he could be a one-year rental. That's Bud Dupree. Or he could be a one-year wonder. But if you look back and you look at this unit, and as special as you think this unit is, you have so many great units that you could put up there. And we're going to talk about all of them. So what we're going to do later on in a couple of minutes in the show, we're going to go ahead and we're going to rank them. And we're going to rank them as the starters because, as my good friend Thaddeus Kennedy says, they need some depth. And yeah, they do need depth. That's 100%. However, I want to talk about them as a unit, as a starting unit. That's really what I'm looking at here. Before we get deep into that, remember, if you want to support this show, tell a friend about it. Definitely tell a friend. like it on YouTube, subscribe. Also, check us out on the podcast platform. So if you're driving in the car and you want some company, there's no better company than Tony Defeo in your speakers. There's no better company than Lance Williams and Michael Beck and Big Bro Sco and Dave Schofield, the editor. And then, and if you're really lonely, you can hang out with me between your speakers too. But definitely do that. You can download them on every single platform out there. We are ubiquitous. We're everywhere. So I'm very proud of that. So as we, another way to help out the show is if you do want to go ahead and throw in the live chat, the super chat. It's if you want to throw in your hard-earned money to get to the top of the queue, we'll definitely honor that, and we'll mention your comment right away, and we appreciate that. But just your support and being our BTSC family in the live chat is important enough. So thank you so much. So let's go and take a look at this, Tony. I'm hoarse. I'm not sure why I'm hoarse today. I'm feeling fine, but I'm losing my voice. So let's go ahead and look at some of the great units of all time. And we're not going to rank them yet. We're just going to bring them up. And the gold standard that a lot of people are going to think of, but it doesn't mean that they are number one on this list, is the first one in what I call the modern era of Pittsburgh Steelers football. And just the modern era of the NFL is basically after the merger. So we're looking at 1970 on. I'll even go down to 1969 just for the fact that's when Chuck Noll and Joe Green arrived and Jack Ham. No, Jack Ham may have been 1970. 69 was also the year that one Al Bundy was cut from the team when Ed O'Neill out of Youngstown State came in. They asked him to try out at and practice at outside linebacker, and he never played outside linebacker before. And but he lasted towards the end. Really great story there as well. So I digress. But if you look at the 1970s, when you think of linebackers, you really think of the Pittsburgh Steelers. In the middle, you had just a beast. They called him Count Dracula. It was Jack Lambert in the middle. And I think, did you write an article the other day, or did you write an article in the past about Jack Ham being every bit of linebacker as Jack Lambert?
Yeah, he gets so overshadowed, but I mean, he was such a perfect football player, and up until Lawrence Taylor came along, he was regarded by many as the greatest outside linebacker that there ever was. So, he was a different kind of outside linebacker than Taylor. He was more of he excelled in pass coverage because they all could do that back then because of the front four. But yeah, I think Jack Dobry Shunka, as they call him, or used to call him, he got overshadowed a lot by Lambert because he was so quiet and he just went about his business.
Where's he from? New Hampshire, or was it Texas or California? Where was Ham from?
Johnstown.
Yeah, where am I from?
Johnstown. So
yes. He went to Bishop McCourt High School. Go Crushers. If I would have went to Catholic school, I would have went to Bishop McCourt, but I'm proud of the Richland Rams. But that's probably about 10, 15 minutes from where I grew up. My house, actually, Bishop McCourt High School was when I lived in the Moxham section. I was 5 minutes away from there. And he was in the era of my parents, and my parents were Johnstown High School at the same time. 1965. I think he was class of 65. And my parents were Johnstown High School, and 2 minutes down the road was Bishop McCourt. So, really interesting stuff. If you grow up in Johnstown, you just love Jack Ham. And my very first Steeler jersey, it was from Hill's Department Store. It was a number 59 Jack Ham, and I still have it.
Great stuff.
And I wore it in 4th grade for Halloween. I had the helmet, I had the eye black, and I had Jack Ham. And I proudly, in that little parade, I was Jack Ham. But I was also a big Jack Lambert fan. Now, I grew up more in the late 70s without the next person I'm going to talk about. You want to talk a linebacker that was really overshadowed. It was Mr. Charles Andrew Russell. Andy Russell, number 34. And if you had a chance to, Tony, you've been reading uni. numero uni, of my ranking of the uniform stables of all time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we got to number
Yes, sir.
34 the other day, the number 34, and Andy Russell. It's amazing how you don't realize how great he was on those teams because he was just overshadowed.
Right.
He played from 1963 to 76. Now in 64 and 65, he was in the National Guard and he was stationed in Germany. But this guy was one fantastic linebacker. So you had Russell and Ham on the sides, and then in the middle, Jack Lambert, who was intimidation personified. What a fantastic group. And I told you the story about how Jack Lambert yelled at me about 10 years ago. Have I told you that story before?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'll just go ahead and relive it for anybody who hasn't heard it. I'll make it quick. So we were doing an autograph sign. I was helping out a guy that ran autograph signings at the mall here in Maryland. And the big headliner was supposed to be Debo, Ryan Clark, and Jack Lambert. Mike Merriweather was there too, that was a big headliner for me, but he was far down the list because they had just won the Super Bowl. And but I got a lot of time talking to Mike Merriweather, great guy. So it's the day before, and Lambert comes in to start signing some stuff. As he's going to have stuff pre-signed so they can go ahead and the dealers could go ahead and sell his autograph and everything. And he had a chance to go ahead and talk to the people that were helping out. And so he said, hey, have them all come out and I'll address them and say hello. And so we were in like this Dollar Tree that was shut down, a part of the mall. And we were all there and right in the middle, sitting on a stool, just like he sat on his helmet, because the stool was this far off the ground. Mm-hmm. And he's sitting on it, and it looked like he was smoking a cigarette at the time, and he had a beer in his hand. it was awesome.
Vintage.
It was vintage. And he's sitting down there, and we're talking. He's just really sweet guy. I mean, really nice guy. He's holding court. And so this was a day that in upstate New York, I don't know where there was an IBM, but somebody came in there was a mass shooting at an IBM office or something. And so Jack wasn't kidding around. He goes, hey, what kind of security do you got here? And he's like, because of what happened in upstate New York. And I said, well, we have mall security and everything. They were making him feel better. And me just being an idiot, I jump in. I go, Mr. Lambert, my name is Bryan. I'm 220 pounds. I'm 5'8". And sir, I got your back. And I point out, I got your back. And his exact words, I can't say exactly, I just, for the sake of all audiences, I'll just initial them. He's like, JC. He said, we're all in trouble. And so I had a good laugh, but he was like just yelling. I mean, not mad at me, but he was just ripping on me. And it was great. I'm like, I'm getting ripped on by
that's right,
Jack Lambert.
It's like Don Rickles.
So yeah, it was great. So the next day, I take my dad back to meet him, and completely different situation, because I go in with I said, Mr. Lambert, I want to introduce you to my father. He's from Johnstown, PA, and he says, Johnstown, that's where Hammer's from. Mm-hmm. And they were talking about Jack Ham, and it was great. And the reason I'm telling you the story, it was like he had such personality, but he had such regard for Jack Ham, the way he was talking. It was really cool. But that is the linebacking unit with all those Pro Bowlers, 2 Hall of Famers on it. Just a fantastic unit.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think that that's the gold standard, but it might not be. But let's go ahead and throw them on the list to be ranked, Tony. So right away, we've got the 1970s. So you go through the late 70s. You can throw in Dirt Winston to that group, then Robin Cole throughout the 80s. And that group with Mike Merriweather, Robin Cole, and Jack Lambert, that was a pretty good group. And then towards the end of the 80s, you're looking more like Jarrell Williams, along with Greg Lloyd. Bryan Hinkle is in the middle.
Bryan Hinkle's very good, yeah.
So if you look at the late 80s, we'll throw them down. And I guess Olszewski's in that group. But we'll just say Lloyd and I forgot a big one.
David Little.
David Little, number 50. So you're looking at like Lloyd, Little, and Olszewski, and Hinkle. We'll make that group your 80s group. Mid 90s, Quiver and Quake, the Blitzburgers. These guys. You know what? We can probably throw in 6 or 7 guys in this group.
Yeah.
Now, the bookends, the ones that you're going to talk about the most, and I'd probably say if you're going to define the 90s with one linebacker, it's a guy we've already mentioned. Who would it be to you, Tony?
The 90s absolutely would be Greg Lloyd.
Lloyd.
He
He is definitely number one. And the reason he's number one is because you only had Kevin Green for 3 years. You only had Chad Brown for 4 years.
Right.
93, 94, 95, 96. Yeah. Chad Brown's in that group. A guy who did not start on that. I guess he just started to start was Levon Kirkland. So he was in that Super Bowl group of 95.
Exceptional talent.
And then you had Jason Gilden.
Yeah.
Jason Gilden was a backup on that team. The guy with the second most sacks all time for the Steelers, Jason Gilden. So the reason I came up with this topic, and I see him right now in the live chat, I've got to give my hats off to our partner, Sir Lancelot Williams. And he sent out a, not a tweet, but in our message group, sent out a picture of Lloyd, Green, Brown, and Kirkland and said, is this the best linebacking unit of all time? And for the Steelers. And I said, then he writes, this is a good show idea. And I'm like, all right, I'm taking it. So I stole this idea. So thank you, Lance, for the contribution. But they quite possibly could be the greatest group in history too. But we're going to throw them down because we're not ready to crown a king yet. You throw in the early 2000s. Lloyd's gone, and you're looking at a guy like early 2000s. Jason Gilden's there, and Jason Gilden's probably the leader of the group. Joey Porter has just come in 99.
Earl
Holmes. That's a pretty solid group. And in the 2002 Ferrier. But let's forget about Ferrier a second. Kendrell Bell.
Oh, yeah.
Defensive rookie of the year. And man, his ankle the mesh in his ankle just tore. Mm-hmm. And he was just never the same. If that guy had a full career, my goodness, could you imagine those mid-90 teams?
Yeah,
with not Levon Kirkland, but with Kendrell Bell still there.
Oh, absolutely, he would have been in his prime.
Oh goodness, yeah. I mean, wow, that's just a shame. Where that his ankle just did not keep up for him, but you had that team there too. But if you're going to go ahead and personify the team of the 2000s, though, we're going to go ahead and we're going to break it down into 2 groups. The first one's going to be Porter, Ferrier, Foote, and who am I missing on that? Because we've got the 2 guys in the middle, Clark Haggans. I was just writing about him last week in Numero Uni. Haggans and Porter were bookends from the same school.
Yeah.
And Haggans, Colorado State, and Haggans credits Peasy for showing him around and getting him acclimated. I was reading. He was like, man, there are so many bridges here. So many bridges.
Yeah, there are. Whoa.
So you've got that group in the early 2000s. The late 2000s, where I was reading today, somebody thought that this was the greatest group in Pittsburgh Steeler history. And it's going to be, of course, the all-time sack leader, one of the nastiest men on the planet, and I loved him, James Harrison. Good leading that group. On the other side, who are you going to throw in on the other side there?
Oh, Lamar Woodley, probably very underappreciated. I mean, he had such a heck of a playoff run, or a heck of a run in the playoffs over various years. Doesn't get credit for the kind of run that he had because it fizzled out because of injuries. But yeah, he was really, really great.
So, and of course, Potsy. So you've got Potsy, James Ferrier, who's one of the greatest free agent acquisitions of all time for the Steelers, coming over from the Jets. I've told you that story before. I was in training in New York City, in New Jersey, but right outside of New York City, and I had to be there for 3 weeks, and this is 2004, and the Steelers were playing Jacksonville, Ben's rookie year, on a Sunday night. This was right after Thanksgiving, like a week after Thanksgiving. And I was hanging around. It was on a Sunday, and this buddy that I met at trainings loved football too. And he's like, "Hey, want to go to see the Jets-Texans game?" Mm-hmm. And here I am going, "Yeah." I don't care who you said. I'm getting out of this hotel that I've been in for 3 weeks. So we go to the Jets-Texans game, and of course, I've got to talk Steelers to somebody. And there were these guys, great Jersey accents, and right behind me. And they were really cool when I was talking to them. And so I was talking to them. I said, "Hey, by the way, thanks for James Ferrier." Because I let him know I was a Steeler fan. And he goes, "We couldn't get a Yugo for that guy." And now he's like Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yep, good old Potsy." I loved him. So you break out. Oh, we missed one. Another middle linebacker from that era, the late 2000s. So they were a long time.
Did you say Larry Foote?
Nope, I'm not talking Larry Foote. Even though Larry Foote came back, and he was there in both eras.
Late 2000s.
This is the guy that pushed Larry Foote out.
I probably will, as soon as you say it, I'll know who it is. Of course.
Let's do this in song with the Bobby Fuller 4. I fought the law and the law won. I fought the law and the law won.
What
the law dog, Lawrence Timmons.
How could I forget him? He was like a robot. He was a machine out there for many years.
Yeah, he's fantastic. So number 1 pick in 2007. So you've got Porter, Ferrier, Foote, and Higgins defining the early 2000s. You got Harrison, Woodley, Timmons, and Ferrier manning the late 2000s. Actually, we're taking I think we're taking Ferrier out of there, and we're putting in we're going to go ahead and put in Holmes, or we're going to put Holmes in that list there too. So there you go. You've got Porter, Holmes, Ferrier, and Higgins. Then Porter, Holmes, Foote, and Higgins. Harrison, Woodley, Timmons, and Ferrier. And actually, it's not Holmes, it's Bell. Holmes was in the late 90s as well. So that's a pretty good group too. Then we get to the 2010s. And you look at the early 2010s. It's a good group, but you still have Timmons in there. You have Harrison. So they're still together in there. You have Jason Worlds that came in before he decided to quit and full-time Jehovah's Witness, and he found his calling. So God bless him. So you had guys like that. And Lamar Woodley was still there too. But then Woodley, some people say Woodley ate himself out of the league, but he had injuries.
Yeah.
He was a big dude, but he could carry around that heft pretty well. It was the injuries that really slowed that guy down. His injuries were not as severe as Kendrell Bell's. but he was a pretty solid player. Now we've got the guys that we've been talking about all along, the guys that we're hanging our hats on right now. Bud Dupree, Bud Dupree, Trent Jordan Watt. Did you know his name was Trent Jordan?
Yeah. I didn't know it at first, but I remember you mentioned on an earlier show, so now I always think of that when I think of TJ.
Trent Jordan and Alvin Budd. Then let's throw in the guys in the middle, Devon Bush Jr. and Vincenzo Williams, Vinny Vidi Vici. And I think that's a pretty solid group. So what we need to do now, Tony, and with help from our friends in the live chat, we need to rank these guys from 5, these not guys, but units from 5 to 1. And I'm thinking that this could be generational. Could be, because if you're talking to you and I, we might be going 70s, early 90s. We could even go 80s.
Right.
If you're talking to, Lance is in there too. If you're talking to Dave Schofield, he's probably, and Jeff Hartman was always like this, where he was going to go ahead and say it was the mid 90s. It was in the 95 team. If you're talking to Michael Beck might be going with anything that he's seen from the 2010s with early 2010s with Debo or now. So, and you know what? Mark Davison just brought this in, and I really and he's absolutely correct. Does Shazier get a mention? Because that was a pretty solid team with Shazier there too. And really we're replacing Shazier with Devin Bush. But if you're looking at the earlier, it's almost like he doesn't really have a home, just because we're talking about early 2000s. He was pretty much middle 2000s, but that was a very important group there too. But for the sake of this exercise, we will go ahead and we could bring up that unit too. We could go mid 2010s as well. And what we would do is we'll call them the 2000 teens. And, it would be Shazier, Harrison, Vince Williams, and Lawrence Timmons was pretty much gone, and then Alvin Budd on the other side. So there's a few. There's actually 3 groups in the 2000 teens too, but we do have to. What we're doing right now is we're looking at where the 2020 version ranks among all these guys, Tony. So if we're looking at number 5 of all of the ones that we put out here, who would your number 5 unit be, Tony Defeo?
The 5, I would probably go with the early 2000s, early to like 2014, the one with Jason Worlds, that particular group, and okay. Harrison and Jarvis Jones was in there. Vince Williams was getting his start. That unit, I guess.
So the early 2000 teens, or the 2010s. So that's your number 5. I like that, because remember, that was a pretty good group. You still had Woodley and Law Dog in there. You still had James Harrison. He left for a little bit in 2013, came back in 2014. Shazier came into the mix. So that's probably Jason Worlds, Jarvis Jones. I guess we got to give a mention. I don't know if he really did anything for that team as far as boosting that unit, but that's not a bad unit there. So let's go ahead and mark them down with the early 2010s. So let's look at number 4 now.
I have to go with the one right after the Superboy era, the one you mentioned with Lambert still in there, and David Little and Brian Hinkle was part of that, and was it Dirt Winston was in that group? Who else? Who am I missing? Robin Cole, yeah, he was a leader by that point. He was
loved Robin Cole.
Yeah.
Number 1 pick from New Mexico.
Yeah.
I was a big Hinkle guy too, but you forgot one, because this is my early 80s. You forgot two in here. If we're looking at the early 80s, it's Lambert, Hinkle, Robin Cole, Mike Merriweather, and David Little.
Right.
So we're going to go with that group. Wow. So people are going to get left off here.
Oh, I thought we were ranking him overall. Oh, heck.
Yeah, we're ranking them number 4.
I mean, I thought we were ranking all their units all together. Okay, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I should change my vote then of the early, because I don't think the early 2000s were the 5th best. No, I thought we were ranking all of them. Okay, can I change my vote for the early 2000s?
Yeah, we can start at number 5 again.
Well, if it's number 5 overall, then I think we have to go with that one we just mentioned. I think that deserves to be way up there of all these units. The one, the 2000s, it's not in there at all.
So the early 80s.
Yes.
Okay. So then we're going to go with the early 80s is going to be number 5. Let's go number 4.
Okay. Number 4. I think we go with
the spot.
Oh, no. I love this. This is great. And another, as an aside, when you mention all these units from the 80s all the way up through the, I guess really the late 2000s, it shows you how the advantage the Steelers had is that one of the few 3-4 defenses in that era, and they had such their pick of so many great guys, because a lot of these guys were backups for the longest time. So anyway, if we're going with number 4, I'm gonna have to go with the late 2000 unit with Lamar and James Harrison, Debo, and Lawrence Simmons, because they won the Super Bowl together and they played in another one. So
let's call them the 2008 era.
Okay.
I appreciate that. Hey, I gotta ask you a question. I'm getting called out here. I always say call me out. Do I say go ahead way too much? Wade Johnson thinks I did.
Not enough for anybody to complain about it. But then again,
it's one of my crutch phrases.
Right. Yeah. People always have theirs. Like mine is that's mine. I don't see anybody. I get enough crap about that. So if I can come up with a go ahead crutch, I wish I could do it.
I'm still going to work on it. I probably do need to work on that. So I appreciate you bringing it up, and I'm having fun with you too. So let's move forward with number 3.
Number 3. Number 3 would be, I think, and I already have my number 1. People are going to hate me, but I have my number 1, and it's what you referenced earlier. It's what your favorite eras are. But number 3 would be the Super Bowl 40 era with Peasy and Clark Hagan's and Larry Foote and James Ferrier. That was a exceptional group, and I can't believe that's the 3rd best unit in Steelers history. That's how good that was.
Wow.
Joey Porter, he had a mediocre 05 season. I mean, he was great, obviously, for his whole time here, but he was kind of off, and then he just turned it on like that. As soon as their playoff run began, and it was critical that he did turn things on. Those last 4 games in that playoff run, I mean, I'm sure Peyton Manning has nightmares about him right now to this day from that divisional round. He just had a great, yeah.
They were all over them.
Right.
And remember when I told you the story about I drove Veron Haynes to the airport right after that Super Bowl. And I was in the car. I wasn't an Uber driver. I just had this opportunity. He needed a ride back to the airport. And I was talking to him, and I said, look, I don't want to overwhelm you with all this Steeler talk. I'm not going to be that guy. And but I've got one question for you. He said, first of all, you can ask me anything you want. I love talking about it. I said, what did you guys know going into that game? I mean, whether it be offense or defense, what did you know about the Indianapolis Colts going into that? And he said, it's simple. Bill Cowher's big thing was we can't give Peyton Manning any time. So we timed it. The defense timed it to change their formations, change everything couple seconds before they knew he was going to snap the ball.
Oh, that's great.
So they were just moving around to try to confuse Manning, and Manning did look it's still hard to confuse Peyton Manning. He still looked good in
Right.
that game.
Right.
But towards the end, what you're talking about, when everybody thought it was over before Bettis fumbled, they were coming after so hard that it just doesn't seem that's the killer instinct. I don't want to say killer instinct, but that's what's lacking right now, the put it away.
Right.
Just the put it away mentality. And I wish they'd put it away. But they really knew how to put it away. So that's your number 3.
That's a great
wow,
unit.
that's a fantastic number 3.
Yeah.
And once again, we're talking Higgins, we're talking Higgins, Ferrier, we're talking not Gilden, Debo. Debo was a backup. Debo's there.
Yeah,
Porter.
Debo was the backup, and it's amazing he was the backup.
And who's the other inside linebacker? Because I've got Higgins and Porter.
Larry Foot. Yeah.
Barry, yeah. So there you go. That's a great number 3. So I think I know where you're going with this.
Yeah.
Because you're going with your era. So number 2.
And I apologize to all the people that remember this unit, but it has to be the 70s unit. It was a great unit.
Really?
70s unit number 2. It was a great unit.
I thought you were going opposite.
No. I mean, if I been able to, I know they're great. Obviously, two of those guys are in the Hall of Fame, and Andy Russell probably should be in the Hall of Fame. If he probably would have been if he was on another team. But if I would have watched that era, I would have maybe put those guys number 1 because they were tremendous. I mean, they the depth that they always talk about that Jack Lambert would get on. People always they sit, and I make fun of Jack Lambert too because of the teeth and everything. But I mean, he was an exceptionally focused football player. And he was always in the right place at the right time. And in the depth that I read a lot of books about those eras, and they just complimented how much depth he would get on passing plays. Like he was always in the right spot, as you saw at Super Bowl 14. And Jack Ham with the 2 crucial picks he had in that AFC Championship game in '74. I mean, those guys were just they were tackling machines. Plus, they were just exceptional athletes who were able to play pass coverage, and they were afforded that opportunity, and they'll be the first to tell you this because of that front 4, that the exceptional front 4 would mean Joe and those guys. So those guys are, a lot of people are going to hate me for it, but I think they're number 2.
Hey, that's what is so great about this exercise. On a lot of teams, number 5 would probably be number 1 in history. So with that being said, I got to tell you. Oh, there's my other one. with that being said, yeah. That's the other one that I say a lot. So with that information in tow, number 1, without further ado, I agree with you.
Mid-90s. Oh, what a unit.
Blitzburgh.
And they could all those guys, well, except for Kevin Green, he wasn't much in pass coverage. He was like all pass rush all the time. But Greg Lloyd could do it all, and Chad Brown was an exceptional talent who could play inside and outside. But he played out or inside here, and of course, Levon Kirkland was maybe one of the most underappreciated superstars that the Steelers have had here because they didn't win a Super Bowl. He played in the Super Bowl, but he didn't win one. But I mean, the guy was 300 pounds and he could drop so far into pass coverage. I mean, he was just a beast all the way around. I just love that unit. Just a great unit.
And if I'm not mistaken, I already mentioned Jason Gilden as being a backup, but I believe his last season in Pittsburgh was 1995 for Jerry O, and I think Jerry O was on that team too.
Yeah.
I definitely believe that Jerry Olszewski was there too. There's a lot of people in the live chat going and putting their rankings in there too, and it just really goes with sometimes it's your era, and sometimes it's just what you remember the most. I've got to tell you, it's hard for me to go ahead and leave any of these guys out because we've left some out. And you know who we left out the most? And we left out the 2020.
Yeah. Well,
I have no problem leaving them out because they haven't accomplished what these guys have.
Right.
Where do they stack up? If this defense stays together in 10 years from now, can we be talking about this group as being an all-time great? Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, especially if they frame it with a championship run or two. I mean, that's a lot of what we remember is framed by Super Bowls and runs towards Super Bowls. I mean, those mid-90s linebackers. I mean, they didn't win a Super Bowl, but they came pretty darn close, and they were rarely the reason that they lost in those difficult AFC Championship games. And of course, that Super Bowl 30 loss had very little to do with them, and they weren't together as long as the guys from the 70s, because free agency didn't exist back then. So, a lot of it is your era, and I think a lot of it has to do with did they win a title or not, and if this current unit plays together for 3 or 4 more years as a unit and wins a title, then they're going to have their place in team history.
So Wade Johnson, he brings this up. Has 2020 made the playoffs? This team has not even made the playoffs yet. No. Some of Bud Dupree has. TJ Watt's made the playoffs. Yeah, I mean, has one career playoff game. Of course, Vinny Vici has a very good playoff experience. He's been to an AFC championship game, as well as Alvin Budd, Devin Bush now. But here's the thing that I'm going to ask. If we look at this list and you just do the top 4, number 4 being Harrison and the 2008 defense, that Super Bowl 43 defense, being Harrison and Woodley and Timmons and Foot there. And even not just Foot, but I keep missing them because I'm going through a bunch of linebackers in my head. And Ferrier, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But when you're bringing up all these guys, you're not taking them off the list. And so you could make a case for them to be number 1 too.
Right.
The number 5 in there, Lambert, Hinkle, Robin Cole, Merriweather, and David Little. Could you possibly move them out for this 2020?
Yeah, but you could
linebacking core. And I'm going to ask you guys, just give me a yes or no on that. Could we go ahead and put the 2020 team and rank them up at number 5, or are they just not there yet? Now, I'm sorry. Go ahead and answer.
I think in a couple of years you could, for sure, and you could also put the early 2000s group. They might have a lot of arguments. They had some good players on that in those years.
Is it safe to say that the Pittsburgh Steelers have one of the best linebacking histories of the last 50 years?
Well, the last 50 years, I think all those players you mentioned, I forgot. Like, I can't believe so many of those guys were backups for years. I think they have the best absolute in the NFL over the last 50 years.
That would be a great. Too bad Dave's the editor now, and because that would have been a great stat geek that he would need to take 3 weeks on and put together the best linebacking teams of the 1970s through 2020s of the last 50 years. But Andrew Wilbur does say we have the number 1 linebacking history over the past 50 years. I think that's something fantastic. So we're going to go ahead and look ahead, and we're going to recap this. So number 5, you're saying the early to mid 80s defense, the linebacking core, highlighted by Lambert, Hinkle, Cole, Merriweather, and Little. And, we're missing a couple guys in there too. Number 4 would be the Super Bowl 43, 2008, headlined by Debo.
Mm-hmm.
At number 3, the Super Bowl 40 team, headlined by Potsy and Porter.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, the three-headed monster of the 1970s, Ham, Lambert, and Andy Russell. And number 1, Levon Kirkland, Greg Lloyd, Kevin Green, and Chad Brown.
Oh, what a unit.
Well, I mean, all of them. You know, like we said, you just mentioned one of those units. You mentioned number 5, and you're saying what a unit. That's how great it is. So does the 2020 defense and the linebacking core stack up? They're close to stacking up.
Yeah.
Their story's not written yet.
Right. Yeah, it's still early.
And so Ezra's calling you out, though, and Ezra's a great contributor to the show. How can the 2005 unit be better than the 2008 unit?
Why would the 2008 unit be better than the 2005 unit? I mean, Joey Porter was fantastic. Clark Hagan's was almost a Freudian slip, underrated. And of course, you had Foote and Ferrier. Ferrier was in his prime back then. He almost won the Defensive Player of the Year in 2004. I mean, he probably should have won it, but he didn't. He came in second or third, whatever, in the voting. I mean, I think it's like somebody said, it's like picking your favorite child. So you could say either one, but I personally think the 05 team was better because of what they did in the playoffs, what Joey Porter did in that playoff run. That's just my. Larry Foote had a big interception in the AFC Championship game. Ferrier did some things. Clark Hagan's had a nice playoff run.
Nobody understands how good Hagan's was.
Yeah, nobody went. He was right before Woodley, so people and he was right after Gilden, so people kind of forget about him. But he was right there in that little sweet spot where they won Super Bowl 40.
He didn't have the 10 sacks, but he was consistently around 7.
Right.
So I agree with you that you can put them in any order and you're looking pretty good. You had a Defensive Player of the Year in 2008 and 2 guys on the 2008 team that had 10 plus sacks. But you look at what they accomplished and just what they did alone to Peyton Manning in that one playoff game. I'm probably giving the nod to the Super Bowl 40 team.
And it's not just the year; it's that era. I mean, they were good from 03 through 06. That's when they reigned supreme. It wasn't just the 1 year. I think they were good for a number of years together.
They consistently restocked.
Yeah,
and that's what's so great about them. And in 2007, I mean, you got to think about this too, Tony. You look at how great that 2005 linebacking core was, and Mike Tomlin comes in 2007. And adds a number 1 and a number 2 pick to the mix.
Right.
And throws them in the mix. And that 2008 team had 6 guys on it too. I mean, where you could really say, so we can go anywhere there, but I think we agree on the number 1, and that's the best part about it. So at this point, let's go ahead and throw in some questions for the show. I haven't had a chance to go ahead and look back. I was all embroiled in this conversation. So in about the 5 minutes left that we have here, throw in some questions to justify the Q&A. So Tony, do you have any questions for me while we're waiting?
I just think it's not a question, but a comment. I'm glad you asked because this has been a fun show. I was kind of contained in the beginning. But I've been talking really, really fast the last 10, 15 minutes because I'm just so into it. I just love this discussion. I could talk about this stuff all day long. So
you're gonna love this then. And I haven't even said this to you yet. Dave and I were having a conversation after your show on Saturday where you were looking back. So I've got a proposal for you for another show for you and me to be a special every once in a while show, maybe once a month, but it will have to deal with a lot of Steeler memories. So you're going to love that, but I'll talk to you more about that when we get off of the line and do our post-production meeting. So here's our first question. Andrew Wilbar, although the chances are slim for both, who has a better shot at the roster, Blacknell or Darboh?
Gosh.
That's a great question. I love that. So we don't know enough about Blacknell. We know what he did. We love his size. We know what he did at Penn State. But Darboh had some time with the team last year, starting in late November, early December. So what do you think?
That's a that's one that I'm not as familiar with either player as I would like, so I don't know. I would have to go with the guy that was on the team last year based on everything with COVID-19. They might stick with somebody that they know from 2019.
Here's the next question, Ezra. What middle linebacker would you want to join the 2020 defense? Kirkland, Ferrier, Chad Brown, or Timmons? Oh my goodness.
Throw a dart at the board.
So, Chad Brown, here's the cool thing about Chad Brown. He played middle linebacker. Then you moved him to the outside, and then he went crazy with the sacks.
Mm-hmm.
So probably the first one I'm going to take off the list would probably be Kirkland because he didn't drop into coverage.
Right.
Because
did
he drop into coverage?
Oh, he was really good at that. He was a rare talent for being as big as he was. The big play in it was at the AFC Championship game against the Broncos when they lost. He had that like one-handed interception downfield. I think it was that game. He was just amazing. But I mean, as far as like the greatest athlete from that group, it's probably a toss-up between Brown and Timmons.
You know what? For me, it's James Ferrier probably.
Mm-hmm.
But I would take any of these in a heartbeat. If you told me I got to add any one of these guys, it would be like, oh, that would be awesome.
Right.
Kirkland was a gigantic man, and he was still pretty quick. So maybe I'm wrong about him dropping into coverage. Timmons, as he got older, had trouble dropping into coverage, but he played a while.
Right.
Maybe I'd take Chad Brown too.
Yeah.
And the thing about Chad Brown is you can move him around a lot.
Yeah.
He's versatile. I think Potsy's my guy, though.
There's a great quote from, I don't know if you remember, I think his name was Robert Griffith, the fullback for the Broncos in the late 90s. And he was talking about how he had to block Kirkland, how impossible that was for his size. So he started cutting him. He started blocking him low, and Kirkland got really angry. He's like, "Why are you going to be cutting me?" And he's like, "Why do you got to be 300 pounds?" I thought it was pretty funny.
Hey, let's throw Lance Williams into the mix here. Lance, what middle linebacker would you want to join the 2020 defense? Are you going Kirkland, Ferrier, Chad Brown, or Timmons? I just want you to throw one up there. I love that question. Because here, everybody's taking somebody different in the live chat.
They're all
in fact, I don't think anybody's taken Chad Brown, but I really like the Chad Brown idea too.
I mean, when you look at these guys, it's like they're so good at finding linebackers in those days, especially. It's like a Division I college football team like Alabama that just recruits great players year after year. They were able to find these guys year after year after year. I can't believe they had all four of them. Obviously, Ferrier was a free agent pickup, but still, they were able to find so many guys that fit their system for so many years.
Ferrier was the not the only number one pick of the group. Kirkland was a number 2. Chad Brown was a number 2. Ferrier was a number 1 of the Jets. He went 8th overall, but he was the highest pick.
Mm-hmm.
And Timmons went 15th. And Timmons would have not been on that team if it hadn't been for the Carolina Panthers agreeing to get rid of their number 14 pick, trade it with the Jets, who was a number 16 and wanted to jump up. Timmons would have been Darrelle Revis.
Mm-hmm.
And that's almost crazy to think of Darrelle Revis on that team, too.
Right.
On that 2000 and 2007, being on that 2008 team.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I mean, that could have even been crazier, but I love the Law Dog. I'm pretty glad with him. Lance hasn't answered us yet. But I'd love to hear his opinion and we got to thank Lance once again because this was an awesome topic. I really enjoyed
fantastic.
it.
I love it.
Let's go to Thaddeus Kennedy because now we're who would you take? And I love these questions. Who do you guys take on your team, Deion Sanders or Rod Woodson? It's an ongoing debate between me and a coworker.
Well, who was the
Who made? I know my answer.
Who made the all NFL 75-year anniversary team when he was not even in his 10th year in the league, and that was Rod Woodson. I mean, Deion's great. I mean, to anybody who wants to discredit Deion Sanders is crazy because he's in the Hall of Fame, first ballot. But I would take Woodson. I think he was a better overall player because he could, obviously he liked to play to run. He could blitz and do all those things. He was just an exceptional talent. So I would take Rod Woodson.
Woodson had better hands too.
Yeah.
However, it's really hard to choose between those guys. You look at Deion Sanders and you think about how much the Steelers missed out on a couple of guys in that 1989 draft. I know they had their heart set on Tim Worley at the time, but if they would have picked just a little bit earlier, and I'm really mad at those guys for winning 3 out of the last 4 in 1988. They went on a run that last quarter of the season, won 3 out of 4. They still picked 7th overall. That's how bad that season was.
Oh, that was horrible.
And the guys that went before him, I mean, with the exception of Tony Mandarich being he wasn't a huge bust because he was around for 10 years, but you had Aikman going first. Then you had Barry Sanders going 3rd. Yeah. Derek Thomas was in there. Broderick Thomas, who wasn't great, but he was still good enough. And then Deion. Oh, my gosh. Mark Tobin says, but Deion changes the game, though, too. Ezra Nehemiah says, Deion was amazing, but like Ed Reed versus Troy, it depends if you want run support. Ryan O'Toole says, Woodson because he's anti-diva. I love it. This is probably going to be – we're going to have to think of something fun like this for the Q&A next week. Yeah. So Lance is saying that the 70s unit is number 1. He's going with the 70s unit. Look, you can't disagree with any of them. You really can't. But I do respect that too because I almost took the 70s unit, but I just backed up your 90s unit. But you can go, well, here's the thing, though. 70s unit won 4 Super Bowls. The 90s unit didn't.
Right. Well, yeah.
So I'm changing my answer.
That's all right. Take the heat off of me. I'll probably get a lot of hate mail for that anyway. So good. People will remember that's the last thing you said, that you made good at the very end. You came in and hit me with the chair.
It was Lance made me think. There you go. But anyways, it doesn't matter. The bottom line is you've got some great linebacking units, and the 2020 unit isn't quite there yet. But here's the great thing about it. They're pretty darn great. For any other team's history, they might be one of the best or in that equation. So that's the thing you got to talk about. So we're going to wrap things up. We're going to thank you all in the live chat for hanging out with us. It's great to talk about stuff like this, especially, we're still in the midst of a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
We're in June. There's not much to talk about. This is fun stuff. We've got it pretty good with a 2020 linebacking unit that's pretty special. We've got it pretty good that we have 5, 6, 7 other linebacking units that we could talk about that were so awesome. And that's it. Oh my gosh. Here's a live chat. Bad. I would like to apologize if I upset you yesterday. It wasn't my intention. Not at all, Snowman. I actually wrote something to you at the very end of the show, and I don't know if you missed it. But my God bless you. You were a big part of that show yesterday as we talked about Father's Day. And you've really had a lot going on in your life. And it was one of those days that where some celebrate, some have memories of loss that really hurts. So Snowman, you are such a big part of this show. So I wanted to bring that up. Thanks for the $5. It's in the tip jar, but God bless you. I'm so glad you were a part of that show. Not at all. You did not upset me at all. In fact, I felt like I needed to type more and I just couldn't. But with that being said, we're up against the clock. And we're going to go ahead, and there I go again with going ahead, Tony. But we're going to wrap up. Check us out all week long. There's a podcast every single day. We love you, live chat. Every single one of you are special to us. For Tony Defeo, my name's Bryan Anthony Davis. You call me bad. And just when you think you've got all the answers, like Rowdy Roddy Piper says, Tony.
We keep changing the question. See you next week.
All right, guys. We love you. We'll see you.